Hi, I'm Peter Reinhardt, and welcome to Pizza Quest. As you know, Pizza Quest is a lot more than just pizza. Those of you who've been following us for a while know that we cover a lot of ground, but there's something that sort of most of our guests have in common is that everybody's driven by some kind of an inner vision of what it is that they want to do. Sometimes it's related to food, sometimes it's not. Today it happens to be. And so we have as our guests today two folks who I know here in Charlotte. I've known Chef Alyssa and her husband Andrew have been running Chef Alyssa's Kitchen for a number of years, but we go back before that. When I first met Chef Alyssa, she was the chef at a restaurant in Charlotte that was doing very innovative vegetarian food. I don't know if it wasn't technically vegan then. But maybe more, you could say plant-based. And and yet the thing that sort of struck me, aside from the fact that the food was so great, was that as I learned after I got to know you a little bit, that you weren't really even a vegetarian yourself. You were a chef first, who just happened to find yourself in a unique situation and had to get real creative there. So that's really what kind of sparked my interest in you. And then I started following you here locally in Charlotte as you moved through a number of different restaurant iterations and then catering and then started a cooking school, which is what is if I'm it's still called Chef Alyssa's Kitchen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, welcome to the show. And Andrew, then I met you along the way because when I first met you, you were Alyssa. Was it Gorelick? Is that how you pronounce your
Yeah. Yeah.
like, so it's a name that has many different pronunciations. So they're never sure what to call it. But then all of a sudden you were, also then Alyssa Wilen, and so the two of you got together. So what I'd love for you to do is to kind of bring our listeners up to date on this journey that you've been on that led you from cooking in a restaurant kitchen to having your own cooking school, and what that's all about and what it means to you to do this.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I am so happy to share and so happy to be here because even before my days at the vegetarian restaurant, I knew you because I worked my way up through restaurants, and many of the restaurants I worked at were first opening, and they would tell me, "Well, we're going to do," and I worked the pizza oven and the wood-fired grill at a lot of restaurants, and I loved that. I love live fire. They would always say, well, we have Chef Peter Reinhardt coming in to do our bread program. We're going to follow his recipes, and that's how we're going to set things up. So I've worked a lot with your recipes, and then when I was the chef at Fern, it was really a great way for me to. My first love of food is local ingredients and quality ingredients. So if you start at that base level and you have a love of vegetables and sustainable food, then it naturally, I would cook a lot of vegetarian and plant-based food. And I love that term because it's a lot more open to folks that don't need to define themselves as eating a certain way. So um, when
Go back to
we,
Fern. So Fern was the name of the restaurant where I first met you. I didn't realize that you knew me before I knew you. But then after I got to meet you there, and I loved the food there. In fact, I remember one of the things that I remember my wife pointed it out as soon as we walked in was you had some kind of a living garden growing on the wall in the restaurant of various kinds of I don't know what they were, moss and edibles growing on the wall, an edible wall, and that was kind of cool.
yeah.
And it was very innovative at the time. This was like what, over 10 years ago, before
Mhm.
this sort of plant-based thing really took off. It was a kind of unique, especially for a city like Charlotte, which is more of a meat and potato city. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's sort of like that struck me. And then we ended up doing a radio show together, and we got to talk
Mhm.
a little bit more about that trend. And then I'll let you carry on from there.
Oh, well, it's funny that you mentioned the live wall because if you walk into our space now, we have grow towers. So we do a lot of hydroponics and we have lettuces and herbs and lots of stuff growing out of there. And that's a cool little like circular effect that I didn't realize. But at the time when this was back in 2012 or 2011,
I think 2011.
when the restaurant first opened, Andrew and I were first dating. So we were newly in a relationship and trying to navigate what it looked like for my hours versus his hours being in a more of I wouldn't say corporate, you come from a corporate setting, but at the time you were in event planning. And those two were like a perfect fit. So we would brainstorm about what his job was exciting about his job and how it related to food. So it opened up my eyes to the public, instead of just cooking for people, what it looked like for people to appreciate food in this event setting. And I never really thought, as and most chefs will probably say, I don't think about what people cook in their own home. But you of course do, because you're adapting recipes for people to follow. And now I do that. And instead of it just being on a whim when I want to cook, I'm really thinking about how people are going to follow these recipes and adapting the food and the experience to that. So that's how the idea of Chef Alyssa's Kitchen was born. I like to say it was
Both
just,
working at Fern, I mean, both working for, because Fern was owned by a catering company, right? So the restaurant was just part of a larger food empire that was mainly catering based. Andrew, were you working there
Mhm.
at the catering at that time?
No, I have no food background at all.
Oh, so okay, so you didn't actually meet at when you were at Fern. You met when you started to do the kitchen.
Yeah, we met right before I started the job at I was moving from one of the restaurants to the new one with vegetarian. And
So she had some more free time.
I know, you know, a little gap of time where I had some free time. We started dating, and then during that time, he was also starting a new job, and that was in event planning. So he would create events for anybody to sign up for, which is kind of how our classes started, with just being open to anybody. And so anytime there was a food focused event, or he would bring in a chef, whether yeah, like, or work with a restaurant, he was like, these are the most popular events that I do. I'd love if you would do that too. And it was just not something I was interested in at the time,
Yeah,
but
it was a hard no at the time.
working so many hours, most chefs add cooking class as just an afterthought. It's like, oh, let me just have some guests in, I'll demo something. But we really wanted to give it more than that, really just let people cook and bring home ideas that are going to relate exactly to what they need right now. Not, oh, this is like a nuanced thing that I might make once in a while as a special occasion, but what are really tips that are going to help people cook at home and cook better and appreciate food and cook with whole ingredients and not just make things quick and fast.
But
So
that's a
we,
scary step to go from, kind of, I'll call it the security in a very secure industry, having a chef position in a restaurant, to starting your own business. And that is, I think, what a lot of our listeners are interested in, because many of the people who follow us are either new in business themselves or looking for how to grow their businesses. And so I'd love to explore that a little bit more with you guys, and how you
Mhm.
envisioned it, because you started out really with an idea, and then
Mhm.
loaded with risk. And the next thing I know, you got a location in a new part of Charlotte, not a new part of Charlotte, but a part of Charlotte that is newly sort of happening. It was the latest growth area in the city of Charlotte, which is a growing city. And then you had to figure out, okay, now we've got the space, we've got some skills, but what are we going to do with them? How are we going to make money at this?
Yeah, and that's, if you look at what we have now and want to take the leap, it would be so much more daunting. But at the time, we took it really slow and really small and built it. And that was the key for our success, is like this grassroots small start. And I understand, especially in a city like Charlotte that's experienced so much growth, to break through can take a lot. And sometimes you don't always have or feel like you have the time to start small. But if you build it up from where you're comfortable, maybe it's a small investment and it just keeps growing. That's the biggest advice I can give. And I'll let Andrew speak a little bit, because he does so well at speaking to exactly how we started. But we were just really scrappy, and we tried something, and worked a lot of odd jobs at the time to really like know if it was going to click. So uh, we can explain that a little bit, because it was a good start.
Yeah, when we first found our location, it was in Atherton Mill, which it's changed since then, but at the time in the developing area of South End and Charlotte, it was a big open indoor farmers market that took over a huge old warehouse that had once produced something,
Trolley.
Yeah,
Trolley barn.
it held the trolley that was like 50-foot ceilings. They were huge.
Right.
And they were a tenant. They had subtenants, and we were a subtenant of them. And we both had a relationship through our separate works with the woman that ran the market. And we were able to convince her, hey, when the market's closed at 5 o'clock, we would like to come in the end of the day and run these cooking classes. And so we were able to get a much better deal on our rent than we could at any other time. So when we talked about starting slow, we were able to get that opportunity, and it was still hard to describe. And this was 2013 when we started. And so we would always say, hey, have you seen the movie Hitch? Do you remember when they go to the fish market and they have a cooking class scene? It's kind of like that, but hopefully no one gets allergic reaction.
Well, so basically the Atherton Mill where you launched this, it was kind of like an incubator space, right? For lots of businesses that were just getting which is another trend that's happening around the country. And a lot of businesses have kind of got launched at these incubator locations. And I remember now the,
Seventh
when
Street.
Mill launched as an incubator, and then you guys were there. And so that's where the classes began. I'd forgotten about that. Because
Yeah.
I was sort of all this time I'm following you in the news. You're in the news all the time because you were doing classes, and I think somewhere along the line I saw you. I think going face to face with Bobby Flay or something on one of those Food Network shows. So suddenly you were kind of getting out there and building your personal brand and the brand of your business. So Atherton Mill was your launching pad then for the kitchen.
Yeah, we definitely felt we were onto something special at that time, because Atherton Mill was a cool place to go to, but coming to like an evening event on your date night, you're spending, $150 for for the experience, and you're walking into a huge warehouse with no air conditioning nor heat. It's dusty, it's dirty. There was farmers selling things from their farms there just an hour earlier, and people really liked it. And that was, during the time where like we made the space as pretty as we could. We embraced the rusticness of the environment.
So it grew in an organic fashion. You started, in an incubator, and in an incubator with a lot of humidity and warmth, and moved it. Eventually, you somewhere along the line, you just got the idea, we got to get a better space than this. Take the next step.
Once we had a lot more offerings, we started doing kids classes and camps, and we were hosting a lot of corporate and team building events, private events. So it really built off of each other. We had people that would come in for a small class that we would run, and then they were like, well, this would be great as a team building. Let me go tell my friends or tell my coworkers. And so when I say like grassroots, it was like we put so much passion into those classes and experiences to show people a good time, and then they would continue to tell more people. So just that initial effort really was so helpful. I didn't have anybody else teaching our classes until we were in like year 4,
maybe year 5.
Yeah. And now, it's been close to half of as long as we've been open. It's just because we love it. We always want to do it. And now with the new space, it's led to a lot more growth, and hopefully like more as we're looking forward. But we spent like $10,000 of our savings personally to just get whatever equipment we could, and then everything we made, we would just put back into getting some more, because more equipment meant more classes.
Yeah, I remember we had 20 people in the class. We could hold 20 people. We could hold 20 people. We could only afford 10 knives, so you had to share a knife.
Yeah.
And then I remember there's a day, all right, cool, we can buy 10 more knives. This is great. And then one day, we can buy another table so we can have 4 more people come if we want to.
Classic. It's the classic story, just letting it happen and taking each step, essentially trusting that the escalator will have another step meet your feet when you're ready to put them down.
Yeah.
So now, pardon me, I know that when I had my business, I had similar challenges, and I met with a consultant one day and said, "Listen, how, give me some advice on how to grow my business." And he said, "Well, you got to remember one thing." He said, the hardest part initially is you have to have a product that people really want, but that only represents 10% of your business. The other 90% is marketing. You have to assume once you got the product, then you got to find a way to sell it. So I'm guessing that that's where the combination of you two working together kind of really brought this additional energy. So how did you market it? How did you grow the business?
We started in the early days of Instagram and what people now call, quote, influencers. And so we would look for people within the community and that we thought were community leaders, maybe with either in their position, in like professionally, or maybe their position socially. Oh, they seemed like they're like a networking type of person, and we would say, "Hey, please come," and we would take it, we would share it, and when Alyssa says scrappy, we was well before we had kids, so we had a little more extra time, but we did. Everyone that asked us to do something said yes, and Peter, people ask you for things all the time when you're in a position, and you're like, "I wish I could, but there's only one of me. There's only so many hours I have." For us at the time, we said yes to everything.
Yeah.
And so I remember we went, yeah, you have to do that in the beginning. I remember we went to an event called the Ballantine Festival. And in Charlotte, Ballantine is a really big, popular area of families and businesses. And
A little more suburban.
it's a little more suburban, but we're like, oh, well, that's a great market. So we went there. We went to this festival. We thought it was going to be huge. I think 5 people showed up at this demo. We spent hours ahead of time getting ready for it, being there. But we kept doing those little things because you hear from marketing, if someone has to hear your name 6 or 7 times, and we're like, you know what? If somebody was like, hey, I think that was the girl that I saw at the festival, then, maybe 3 months later, they'll consider doing something with us. And so we just really grinded and for about a year and a half. And then what changed over for us was gift cards, which happened most predominantly around December and the holidays.
You are also, I'm going to step in for just 1 second because you are sort of forgetting with the demos, we also did a lot of TV segments.
Yeah.
So
I saw you on TV all the time. Yeah.
That was, oh yeah, that was our strategy for so long, because not only did we get to go on the show, we would connect with the producers, the anchors, the people who are part of it, and they might transfer jobs or go to another agency, and then they remember you and you can reach back out and there's another launching point for something else. And we also got content from it to share on social media. So all of it added up, and at the end of the day, it cost us our time and our ingredients, and we were willing to do that for anything. So we just filled our calendar with as much as we could. And even if it was small, it would lead to something. I know it's really funny to think back. We've got like some of the anchors that we were on like the first show in Charlotte with are now like, it's really hot on Instagram. Like look at Nick Koser, like you used to go on shows with him and now he's like got millions of followers for dancing.
Well, we first started going on shows was a news anchor for WCNC, which is the NBC Charlotte, Diane Gallagher. She posted on Twitter, she was looking to have a chef segment at the station. And a friend of mine that I went to college with tagged us in it, and we were like, all right, we're on Twitter now, I guess. And we responded, connected, and that's how we started. We were on every Saturday morning. Diane Gallagher is now a correspondent on CNN.
Oh, yeah. So she kind of carries you into her larger circle then of influence, and which is great. And that's of course social media, how it's supposed to work, right? How it's the modern form of networking that fast tracks everything if you know how to do it. And I think the key to all that is you've got to have the energy and the perseverance and the scrappiness. I love that term scrappy. We at Johnson & Wales, we always used to use the term grit, and part of our job as instructors there and teachers there was to help develop grit in our students, which is, I think scrappy is even a better word. I love it.
It's really, it's important. I think that's a lot of the missing piece. And you can kind of tell the difference with folks that are just starting out and expecting for something to happen so fast, and it doesn't. I mean, and we were doing so much, and then what Andrew was about to talk about was like when gift cards hit, we didn't even consider it. We didn't even know how to produce a gift card for the first couple of years. And then after maybe the first year, and then all of a sudden it became something that people started hearing about, and it made the perfect holiday gift. So we pulled it together, and sure enough, it was a big it
was wonderful. The ultimate goal was we want people to come. However they come, whatever means gets them here, we want them to come.
So yeah, I didn't even think about that, how powerful a tool the gift card side can be. And and again, like a lot of things, technology made it more doable. So would you say like during the holidays, that would be like a big marketing push time where you could sell a lot of these classes in advance, which is again nice because then you're working with their money, toward, and you owe them, but at least you get paid in advance, which is kind of nice.
It's great for cash flow.
Yeah. So now we're talking about now over 10 years ago, you started small. It started to grow. I know when I came by to visit the school, when was it, about 5 years ago or so, and we were talking about me maybe coming in and doing a break class or something like that. You had then other instructors besides yourself that were teaching. So you've built a staff there now. How's that staff growing?
It's been really fantastic over the last few years, better than we could have ever expected, because when we had the model, and it's funny, I think a lot of people think of in terms of pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. It's like the new way of thinking about timelines. So pre-pandemic, we would do collaborative classes on subjects like sustainable seafood, grilled cheese, people that maybe in the industry that we thought were like really cool, they were friends of ours, come in and teach a class. Not often did they come and teach their own class because a lot of them didn't have teaching experience. So about when we had I would say the launching, we had a couple of people on our team that could teach classes because we really trained them to do so, but they were only a couple of other people, mostly private events. So when we had our kids, when we would take leave, we designed a few weeks where we had guest chefs in, and I would give them like a training manual and they would teach a class. And it was really fun and really cool because now all of a sudden we got these restaurant chefs that would come in for one night only, teach a class. And yeah, it was really fun. There was its own set of challenges because it's a very tough timeline, because you feel like you have a lot of time, but the guests have to cook. You do it. The format is that I or another chef on our team will do a demo, and then all the guests within their table groups will cook.
And that demo is anywhere between 8 and 15 minutes.
Yeah, and you have to be really tight and get it all in.
The guests always wonder, why can't I cook with the chef? Because we're like, you won't be able to listen.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
You from some of the other local cooking schools like Sur La Table had but those were mostly demo classes, whereas you were doing hands-on, participatory classes.
Yeah, pretty exclusively. And I mean, we never really do a demo unless we're like offsite doing an event. So everybody's cooking. So you really have to factor in all that time. So it was a little tough to manage so many different chefs and so many different ideas of their dishes and timelines and things like that. So the way we have built since then is we really carried a lot before the pandemic and before these special certain classes. We carried a lot of part-time people to assist. And I was also teaching more. Now that we have 2 kids and we're not able to be there as much, we've sort of organically found a way to build up the team. So we started having a lot of our full-time team come and say, I have an idea for this class. It really I think I would do well with the opportunity to teach. And we devised, really tight, straight training program. And now we have so many more full-time employees. When people are hired with us, they are pretty much going to go through it, and whenever they're ready, they're going to go through the training process to instruct. And sometimes and they start off with maybe our kids' classes or events that feel like, they don't feel so nervous doing.
Even the tapas tastings.
Yeah, where everybody, and even if you're not instructing, you're assisting. So you're getting used to speaking to people and teaching these skills in the way that we want them taught. So everybody grows in that way. And when they're ready, they are designing classes and teaching them, and it all fills in the gaps. Everybody's got unique ideas. They have things that they want to study and make, and it's really fit in well. So we have a lot more, instructors. If you look on our website, we've got a really fantastic team, and they're all comfortable. They're all really comfortable. It's hard to find that in chefs. Sometimes they just have a back of the house mentality, and they are nervous about doing that. But we've found a really good mix of both, to be both front and back of the house, customer service, and just all the things it takes to gain confidence to lead these people that are really outside of your industry. They might be executives in their role at a bank or a corporate company, and now you've been out of school in the industry for a few years, and you're able to like conduct yourself in a way that's really like connecting with them on this level of food. So it's fun, and everybody really enjoys it. We wouldn't want nobody can be on our team who just wants to go through the motions and doesn't care about this element of the industry. It's also, I feel like, especially in Charlotte, because we've grown into ourselves, and at the time there weren't businesses like ours around, that I get people applying for our job from school, especially at Johnson & Wales, where they're like, I really want to teach. When I was going through culinary school, I never thought about teaching unless I was going to later in my career go to culinary school to be an instructor. That was the only facet I could think of teaching in. So it's really cool that we have these young people in the industry making this a goal for their career.
And Peter, I'm not sure if you know this or not, but we found this out organically a couple of years ago. At Johnson & Wales, they are teaching our business to young kids in school about here are different ways you can look and take food as your career.
Career opportunities, yeah. Yeah. So in other words, they can use you as a model for one direction, a direction other than going to work in for the bear.
Yeah.
So, which leads me to ask, as you go forward, I know that one of the things that happens for some culinary schools that start out mainly serving the general public, people who are more like home chefs, who aren't looking at it as as careers, but then they see that there's also people that want professional training as well. Do you see that as part of your future? And then there's a whole track that happens there where you have to get certified, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's not an unusual path. Like, I don't know if you know Loretta Paganini in Cleveland, but she started out doing the same thing. She started out with a small little school for teaching Italian cooking. Now she's got a school where people come for that track, but also to get certified. And she's got a whole, the state of Ohio is certifying them to give degrees. Do you see any of that in the future of your kitchen?
For ours in particular, I don't know that that's the path, because our strong foundation is in helping mostly like home cooks to just be more confident, or people who, especially one of the things that we've honed in on are health-driven classes. There we see so many people coming to us as a resource because they've been diagnosed with something, or they have a health issue, or a family member with a health issue. And they said, well, the doctor said I need to cook this way, but I don't know how to cook. And I don't want to send them to a class where they're going to make, short ribs or like something that I don't think is what they should be learning how to make. Like they need whole grains, they need vegetables, they need all these foods. And so we have offered a lot more in that realm. So at our core, we just want to be a great resource for ordinary home cooks who want to, but at the same time, there are more higher level skills based classes that people can learn if they're wanting to focus on something. And I did, as a professional, want for a long time to have these higher level workshops, and we still work on doing those. They're a little bit harder to fill because that sector is not our audience at the moment. But I think a lot of people still look, because it's great that places like Johnson and Wales and some of the other culinary schools in Charlotte do have public facing classes. So that's still their resource for those kinds of things, or they want to get a certificate or they want to get something. I don't think I have the means to create a curriculum as strong as what you're going to get at a culinary school, but we have those kinds of classes.
In a sense, stay on in your wheelhouse, but because for some of these schools, the one in Ohio that I was describing has been successful at being able to do that, but there are others that crashed and burned because they tried to do too much too soon, and they didn't have the bandwidth to be able to do, all the things that they wanted to do. But I could see that maybe in your case, do customers help you to determine what courses we need to create, like by saying, this is my need, can you create a course that meets my need?
Oh yeah, I ask people to give us as much information and communicate with us as much as possible, because it does drive what we're offering. And something that I think is really cool that you'll find interesting is we have had quite a few young chefs come to our culinary camps year after year, and they are enrolling in culinary school. So it's helped
young teenagers coming.
Yeah, it's helped the youth. Yeah. So that part has been really unbelievable to watch. It's one of the most rewarding things, seeing kids cultivate their skills, and we love it. So that part of it has been really a good drive toward, what do you want to do this in your industry? I have kids that are like 10 years old and they walk up to me and they're like, I don't know if I want to be a chef, but I'm here to learn, and I'm gonna, I want to see if this is for me. It's like a taste of it. It's cool.
Yeah. And it's fun to work with young people, especially if for some young people, they didn't know that they could cook, and they get the skill, and suddenly their confidence level goes up, and they got confidence to ask somebody out on a date and all sorts of what do you think? You went through this period, because anyone who started a business knows that it's not easy. It's hard to do a business, and we can be talking about it now kind of fun and laughing and casually, but there are tough days that you go through. You have to be, as you said, scrappy to get through all that. What do you think drove you guys, just hang in there and stay with it? What drives you? What's your vision for what you want to achieve in life through this particular expression that you've created?
Yeah. At the start of it, it's something you can take ownership of, that and what really holds you to the fire is realizing people are paying me for these services. It's not going through somebody else and I'm just fulfilling a job. Like, they are paying me. If I'm nervous about going up and speaking in front of them, I got to get over that. I got to get over some of these fears that I have, because I owe it to this guy next to me to do my best. And I owe it to the customers because they are my customers. So those things were the things I had to just get over in order to have my ultimate goal, which was create something that I can call my own. And now the drive at this point is owing it to my staff, my team that's working hard to push our vision forward, that it's growing it. And the times where we had to grow in the past, like building out the space that we're in now, a lot of that was because we had to, there's a time limit on development in our area and we need to find something else. Right now, we don't have that time limit, but I do have people on my team that have been with us a long time, and I trust them, and I know their worth and the value they bring to our space, and they're going to want more out of this too. So we're looking at growing, and it's just its own set of hurdles, I think, that we're dealing with kind of on a daily basis right now, of just the expense and the re-looking at our business in a different way, other than just, can we pay salaries and can we pay ourselves and can we make this happen? Like, that's a yes, but the next step is just a little unknown, and those parts are just, I think it's natural, and how you get through that is, who do I have to do this for now instead of just myself?
Well, when you were designing this, and as you're designing it, a lot of businesses will, aside from having a business plan, what did you go through sort of those formal steps of how to do a business? Did you have a mission statement, for instance, that helps to kind of give you a focus? Is that something you could share with us?
We do have a mission statement. It's probably something we wrote about a decade ago. I would love to go back but we have a business plan. But the greatest challenge that we had then, and we still have now, is that there is not a roadmap for what we do. This like recreational events cooking class company. If you had a restaurant, you're like, all right, people in the door, sell food, sell drinks, grow, have a second location, go to a different city. And so, I mean, some of those ideas still represent with us, but the idea is how to grow this, in a sense, optional thing. You go to a restaurant for good food and a good experience. You don't have to go to a cooking class. So why do you want to go to a cooking class? Why do we have to convince you to need to go to a cooking class? And so those are the challenges, even as we design and look at cash flow analysis and pro formas, and that's kind of what we did when we started. We're like, all right, how many classes do we need to do? Here are our revenues, here are our expenses. And and we do that, and we look at those things on a frequent basis. Even now, they're just slightly larger numbers.
Well, maybe this would be a good kind of, we can get you out, on this question, which is, this is the question that comes to me as we've talked about all this, because like you said, you have to go through all the steps that you normally do, and that's the nuts and the bolts and paying your dues and everything else. But ultimately, what experience do you want your customers, your clients who come to the school to have as a result of coming to a class at Chef Alyssa's kitchen?
I want them to feel confident in the kitchen, to not look at a recipe and think that it's really daunting and that I need to follow this exactly to a T. I want them to understand some cooking skills, so that when it's time for them to cook for themselves or cook for their family, they have what's necessary to throw something together and just and enjoy food, enjoy the process. And you get that from, I think, some shared memories that you get from a class setting. And you get that from feeling like, okay, I know how to work. I know how to slice something properly. I'm not looking at my knife drawer like, I don't want to go there. I want to go buy something pre-prepped and make it easy for myself. And I'm sure that all of your listeners have this deep appreciation for food. And if they have a deep appreciation for pizza and those kinds of things as well, you understand patience. And that's a tougher thing to instill in people that are the majority, where they just want it to be easy. So it's that appreciation and patience, and hopefully getting people excited about it that normally wouldn't. And that's the overall goal for me.
But this is why we're good partners, because I would say something else.
Okay.
Good.
It is that plus fun.
Fun.
It's got to be fun. And the environment that we're in, it's not going to be an in the mall, stale, low drop ceilings environment. It's going to be big, open, and inviting. And not all the classes that we do are, educational based in terms of what you're going to be learning and recreating. We do challenge events and like social events that have food and cooking class element to it. But we have shows that people are like, they get to be in their own Food Network show in our space.
Oh, yeah.
And and maybe they're not going to learn how to like, perfectly chop something or put together a dish, but they're going to have a lot of fun doing something else related to what we're doing. And so I really enjoy like getting to know people in the class. And I love when some folks come in and maybe they were kind of dragged to the event by like their partner or some friends, and you can kind of tell they were kind of like, whatever, I'm going to a cooking class.
Yeah.
And then they get there like, this is really cool. And we're like, we
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
You didn't know that, but
That
now you
that
do.
may be- yeah, that happens. So are you saying that people actually come in and you set up a scenario in which they get to pretend that they have their own cooking show and you're filming them while they do that? Is that when you said have their own Food Network show? Is that what you do?
Not that type of show. That would be fun, but they get to do bake off and chop challenges.
Oh yeah, okay.
So they get to feel it, and the moment you put a timer out there, everyone's heart races just a little bit more, and that creates a good element.
The ticking clock is always a good tool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you set up like these situations in which they can get their competitive juices flowing and stuff like that. That's
Yeah,
good.
exactly.
Well, I know that it's a never-ending, learning, growing process, and you guys are now you've hung in there, through the thick and the thin. I meant to ask you, how did you navigate the pandemic years? Because that must have had a big impact on your business.
Yeah, one thing that we didn't really touch on as much now because we've been talking about our classes, but we do have a to-go meal service. So at the time when we moved into our new space, we knew we needed other lines of business to use the space more than just the evenings and for classes. So we do lunch catering that people mostly order for office groups. And then we also do a dinner meal service. It's to-go meals. We call it family table meals, just the kind of food that you would want to spend all day cooking if you had time. And you could do large portions for family. You could do a la carte for individuals, and they're all Monday through Friday. So that part was what we refer to as like 5% of the business, the family table meals. Catering was a little bit bigger because we had, but basically nobody was ordering lunches anymore, and nobody was coming in for a class. So the one thing that made up 5% of our business was now the only thing. And almost overnight, it was crazy because now we're hearing to-go food, to-go food, to-go food. So we already had this to-go food service. And before pandemic, Andrew had been trying to figure out the delivery piece of it, how we could coordinate that.
And makes sense on the business side, yeah.
Well, he kicked it into high gear, and at the same time, he figured out how to get this wide delivery radius, and I grew the menu. So the offerings were smaller, tighter, and we were just like, well, how many more things can we do to make it more robust? And so in the matter of a few days, we did all that, and we were ahead of the game as far as what was being offered in the area to get it out there. And so now anybody on our team full-time and then a portion of our part-time, they were just focused on that. So at the time, the only special event meal service that we did was Thanksgiving sides. We would do all the Monday through Friday family table meals, but then now, as a result, because people kept coming to us, well, what are you doing for, this holiday or that holiday? And we really want to order out because that was what they were doing. We implemented like so many other holidays that we still do. And the menu's still robust, and we still have the delivery, and it's gotten certainly more popular than it was, but it had its peak during the height of the pandemic, and just crazy to think back then, but we're very lucky. We closed our classes for 9 months. We were doing virtual classes from our home, which anybody can go online and still buy those classes because there's still a demand for them. But we recorded all of our classes. There's a library of classes, and I tried to make everything.
By the way, those classes got featured in Food and Wine magazine and Parade magazine as one of the best virtual classes in the country.
Really?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was fun, and we were trying to do things where people didn't have to go to the store and get a ton of ingredients. They could make things like paella, where you mostly needed rice, and then whatever you had in your pantry. So you're trying to break down the a type of dish and put it in a virtual class, and that lasted for about 9 months. And then after that, we slowly brought our classes back. We couldn't have been more ready to get them back. So we did what we could.
Food-based businesses during the pandemic being forced to pivot and come up with something to save the day, came up with some winning ideas that, like you're describing, that then you might not have been, had you not been forced to do so, might not be as an important part of your business now. But it sounds like that now a whole different, track, another spoke of the wheel, business model, which is always good for, for stability. So that's pretty cool. And I don't know, something about resilience, this, I think in the culinary world, we didn't used to use that word that often. Now we do, since the pandemic. But I think the notion of resilience, which we've been talking about, everything from scrappy to gritty to everything, but is really resilience, the ability to bounce back and to adjust on the fly. I think that's a hallmark, of the quote chef community or the culinary community, is because you're forced to. The business is in demand. So congratulations on all that. You've been around long enough now that you're a recognizable, valuable part of the general community. Everybody knows who you are now. You've established your brand locally, and that's, maybe you could say, phase one and into phase 2 and 3, and who knows what the next phases are going to be for you. I'm looking at you. Some of the people who are listening to this are just hearing the audio version, but some are watching us on the video version. And I'm seeing you guys, and you're still like so young. Thank God you were young when you started and had that energy to get through all of this, because you've accomplished so much in the 15 years or so since you've started this path. So congratulations, and thanks so much for being on Pizza Quest today and sharing your story. I think it's inspirational for those who are listening to know that there's a journey. If people want to follow you, like for instance, if they want to see some of these virtual classes and they may not be in the Charlotte area, but they'd like to sign on for some of the classes, how do they do that?
Yeah, and thank you for that. We really love what we do, and it's taken an element of being true to yourself, but also following the market and what your guests want out of it. So we're really lucky to do what we do, and are so happy for this community. It's really all about community. We couldn't have started without that, and we couldn't keep going without that and the relationships. So that means everything to us. And but for our socials, we are at Chef Alyssa CLT. And that's on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook, and we're active on TikTok, all those social medias. And then our website is chefalyssa'skitchen.com. So we have our scheduled events, our classes.
Alyssa is ALYSSA, right?
Yeah.
ALYSSA, because there's a lot of ways to spell Alyssa.
Yeah.
A lot of ways to say Gorelick,
Yeah.
You're a person of many names. But they can go there and they can actually either sign up. Do you also do like postings, Instagrammable stuff, that's the free things that people, just to keep the brand alive?
Yeah, we've done tip videos. We like to share farms and ways to get ingredients and things like that, and just kind of share the whole experience, so you can kind of see dishes start to finish, and how it's done in a class setting, and just like, yeah, it's
Would that be at Chef Alyssa CLT? Would that be CLT, for those who don't know, from outside of our little town here of Charlotte? CLT stands for Charlotte. We all, many of us use that as the suffix of our handles. But well, anyway, so for those who are outside the area and you want to look deeper into this, Chef Alyssa, is it Chef Alyssa's, just Chef Alyssa CLT, or Chef Alyssa's Kitchen?
Yeah, Chef Alyssa CLT is our at, and then on our website, it's Chef Alyssa's CHEFALYSSAS kitchen.com.
Great. Well, again, thank you so much for sharing your story, and for, I don't know, just, it's a real good, for me, it's a local feel good story for the city of Charlotte. Everybody here knows you and loves you now, and I'm glad that I got to know you way back in the early days before you got. And I'm looking forward to coming over to the school. We still
Yeah.
need to talk about.
We're gonna schedule a class with you. So anybody listening, maybe that's something they want to travel in for if they're not in Charlotte. So whenever we coordinate, I know you'll share that information.
Yeah, that'd be great. So we'll talk again soon. And
Mhm.
again, all of you who are tuning in, thank you so much for being with us today on Pizza Quest. And thanks to Alyssa and Andrew Wilen for your story. And we will see all of you again on the next episode.